So, hey, everybody, welcome to 2023. New year, new podcast. Yeah, it's working. Oh, all right, it's working. Cool. So, welcome to our podcast. I'm Charlie with my good friend Alex.
This is cranberry juice.
Nice. Very insightful input. Thank you for that. And we're going to be talking about plans for the new year and how much you can do in a year if you really set yourself to it, or even less, if you think about it. But everybody's in the context of New Year right now, and New Year's resolutions, New Year's goals, New Year's plans. And 2023 can be the best year you've ever lived, and that's what my plan is for 2023 in a nutshell. But you have to decide it, and you have to make it happen. And Andrew Huberman, our hero, one of our heroes, has some thoughts on how to make your dreams come true, for lack of a better word. So we're going to be watching a video from Mindset Mentor, Andrew Huberman clip, basically how to get everything you want. Let's just dive in.
Chemically or electrically activate this brain area in the loser, that loser becomes the winner. If you chemically or electrically activate this brain area in the loser, that loser becomes the winner. If you quiet this brain area in the winner or an animal that's about to win, it suddenly becomes the loser. So you say, what in the world is this brain area doing? There's a classic experiment in behavioral biology called the tube test, where you take two mice, you put them in a tube, and they try and push each other out. They fight for that tube. And one mouse inevitably pushes out the other mouse. The one that stays in the tube is the winner. The one that got pushed out is called the loser. What's interesting is that if you take those same mice and give them new competitors, the one that won has a much higher than chance probability of being a winner the subsequent battle. The loser has a much higher probability of losing. Now that's the first experiment. And you can go, okay, well, winners become winners, losers become losers. But it's actually far more interesting than that. Because if you take the loser and you put him against even a known winner, and you push the loser from behind, the loser becomes the winner and the winner becomes the loser. And even if the effort that the loser that became the winner exerted wasn't their own, right? You've got a human pushing with a stick on this little mouse. So the important thing is the third experiment, which only arrived.
Well, I'll stop there real quick. Obviously, it's a very binary thing, winners and losers in this context, but even that second one is interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll hear the third one to complete the thought, but interesting concept already.
A few years ago. This is an experiment that was published in the journal Science. Science and Nature are our Super Bowl and NBA championships of science. 99% rejection rates, very stringent, thoroughly peer-reviewed, not just any publications. A laboratory, not mine, did the experiment where they monitored the brains of these mice while they were engaging in this tube test battle. And they found that there was one brain area, it's a subregion of the prefrontal cortex, not the whole prefrontal cortex, that's more active in the winner and less active in the loser. So much so that if you chemically or electrically activate this brain area in the loser, that loser becomes the winner. If you quiet this brain area in the winner or an animal that's about to win, it suddenly becomes the loser. So you say, what in the world is this brain area doing to the body and to the psychology of these mice?
Yeah, so before we even get into that, so I think that's really interesting. And the immediate thought or consequence that I think of is, and we talked about this before, but like once you, and this is obviously one mice versus another mouse, but I for people, I think of it in the context of your life, you can accumulate wins. And for me, an easy way to do that is just having a good morning routine. So like, especially Huberman talks about it obviously all the time, getting out in natural sunlight, basically first thing after you wake up for a few minutes, which I've been doing and is really good to kind of reset your mind or get started for the day or wake you up. I don't drink caffeine or anything like that. So it is a good kind of wake up moment for me. But having these little things in the morning where you win and you win and you win, or at least you check the box, it does set, when I get that right in the first part of the day, I notice that the rest of the day I am more inclined to be successful in whatever I'm pursuing. And so that also works over the span of a month or a year, where if you keep doing things right, and however you design that, and you keep doing things and winning, quote unquote, or just basically accomplishing things you want to do, that really builds momentum. And the biology here seems to support that.
Now, we don't know the psychology of the mice, but they did do some important controls. And it's not testosterone. Although there's a testosterone increase associated with winning, it is not testosterone in the moment. It's not cortisol. It's not any of the other normal things that you might think to look to. It's not muscle strength. It turns out that stimulation of this brain area that causes winning is associated with increased anxiety, effort, and adrenaline. And all it does is it converts that anxiety into more steps forward per unit time. Literally just steps forward. So if you take this brain area and you quiet it for a given level of stress, the animal backs up a little bit more or pauses a little bit more. If you stimulate this brain area for the same amount of stress, the animal advances a little bit more as opposed to pauses or backs up.
So it sounds like it's almost in the absence of this thing firing, you're destined to back away and falter. But then the question is, what makes it fire?
Or stand still, but yeah.
Or stand still. So the question is, what's the difference between if both creatures are engaged and they're both experiencing this thing firing, and they're both trying to advance, and they're not experiencing the retreat mechanism, then what does that look like? Or how do we hack that, or how do we engage with that? I don't know if he's going to bring that up or not.
Yeah, we'll get into that in the video, I think. But I just, even on that's why I'm taking it to kind of a more abstract human level, where it's not one versus another. It's just you versus yourself, which is,
Sure.
This goes back to another like old Jordan Peterson thing of just like, comparing yourself to who you were yesterday is, instead of comparing yourself to others, right? Like that's the healthiest way I've found to motivate myself is to not be like, oh, I want to be like that guy. I just be like, I got to be better than I was yesterday or last year or whatever it is. So that's kind of where my mind goes with this, instead of like the mechanics of, but yeah, there's also just on the anxiety thing, for anyone that has anxiety, like this, and I don't know how to trigger it, but I've kind of felt the inverse, that when I go to the gym, my anxiety just goes away. So anyone whose New Year's resolution is the gym, or if you're planning for this year to get in shape, you'll notice some mental health benefits from that as well, or I have at least, because as they kind of were talking about, it's a natural state. Anxiety is a tool of the mind. Like obviously in our modern world with a million inputs and outputs and things to worry about, like it gets overactivated, but it's a tool that can be harnessed, and they do get in this, I remember now. But it's a tool, and if you can let anxiety kind of take over, and obviously there's I don't have it as bad as some people do, obviously, but there's levels to it. But if you can harness it, it's a very good motivator. So I don't know, that's part of what they're talking about, but that's my experience of one way to deal with that. Because I had to realize that I didn't know that. Like I was anxious, and I was like, mountain biking kind of helps with that, but going to the gym and like really lifting weights and really putting in like actual like effort, like lifting things up and putting them down, in the crudest sense, really more than just cardio, really makes that just disappear for me. So I had to learn that, but then that's now the motivator. It was kind of an intellectualized thing, but it's working for me for now.
I mean, yeah, my parallel when I think of this also comes from weightlifting. When I first learned how to do it, it's just very simple. You'd be lifting a heavy weight, like doing a bench press or something, and there's this moment through the motion where you're trying to get it above the level of where the bar mounts, basically. And until you do that, it doesn't really count as a rep. So the whole thing is motion, right? But it doesn't really count until you get that full extension. And when your muscles are burning and the weight's heavy and you're starting to falter, there's this very rapid interaction between your mind and what you're experiencing, where it's just like will I, won't I, will I, won't I, will I, won't I. It's this very fast back and forth where self-doubt is basically like attacking you.
Yeah.
And if you experience both, like there's some days where you're having that interaction and then it's like a roulette wheel that lands and you just land on won't I. The moment you land on I won't, you will not get that bar up. It doesn't matter. You're wasting time until you drop the bar. But if there's other times where you're really faltering and you think you can't at all, but then for whatever reason, either an external encouragement comes, the spotters go like telling you, come on, get it up, or you just have that little extra push in you that day, you get it over. So it's like, there's definitely psychological inputs here. I'm just trying to point to the frame, something like framing is really, really valid in terms of how things are going to go for you in the moment. If you, and this also goes back to, you mentioned, I don't know who you mentioned. I think Jocko Willink talks about this maybe. No, or maybe Sam Harris. I don't know. Approach mechanism. If you're approaching a task or a difficult problem, a stressful situation, you can leverage the stress better because you're turning your mind towards problem solving. But if you are approaching it with complete hesitation and reticence and you're already in retreat, then all that anxiety is kind of overwhelm you because you're not turning your mind towards engagement. So you're not going to do as well.
Yeah.
You'll feel the same level of anxiety either way, though. You just process it differently.
Yeah, Jocko Willink, former Navy SEAL, and I think it comes from the SEALs. It's like a forward center of mass approach where you kind of lean into things, and I think that's what might be what you're talking about. But yeah,
I think that's where I'm pulling that from. Yeah.
I definitely agree. And on the weightlifting thing, I've experienced the same thing on the pull-up bar, because that's what I'm working on recently, and just getting that last rep in, like I know I need to do 6 or whatever it is, and I come on number 5, and I'm like, there was a day or a couple of days where I just couldn't get to 6, and then the next day I was just like, I know I can do it. I've done it before. Like I know I can do it, and then that day I did it. So yeah, I think framing, I think is a lot and more under our control than we, like you talked about. It's almost a coin flip, but like I think we can focus that more and control that more than we may think.
Well, the more wins you get, the more you have a history in the back of your head that compels you to frame yourself positively, and then you can also intervene ahead of time. Like if you, again, framing matters. It's like people do this with fighters all the time. Like in the fight camp, they're actively talking them up, saying encouraging things, and making sure they're sparring people that are challenging, but who they can definitely beat, like leading up to the fight. Like all these things are little mind games deliberately designed by a good trainer to build up the confidence of the fighter. Confidence here not being viewed as some just abstract notion, like flicking a light switch, but confidence being like, oh, this is like a structured real thing that you can queue up if you put the right stimulus in front of it. And again, in this example, interesting, he's literally saying, Huberman's literally saying, physiologically what's happening is that your brain takes that, whatever the messaging is from your anxiety, and translates it to move more, do more, move more, rather than retreat, move more. So advance. And
it's weird because anxiety can trick you into, it's always talked about as fight or flight, but there's a third mode there of freeze. I think anxiety tricks us into freeze mode a lot, where you kind of get frozen into inaction. But if you use that energy and channel it, it can be really powerful. So let's hear how they explain how that works.
And the thing that's really key to take away from this for everyone's individual lives and goals is that if you really think about it, you always have only 3 options. You can either be stationary, you can back up, you can retreat, or you can go forward. And you want to move forward in an adaptive way. You don't want to walk off a cliff or do something stupid financially or physically. But anxiety and stress and what we call autonomic arousal were designed to move us. They create a sense of agitation and discomfort for a reason. But it wasn't just designed to move us to run and hide. It was also designed to move us forward. And a lot of people take the agitation, the fear, the anxiety about starting something new, and they try and work with that and push down on it. There's just so much.
actually, yeah, I see a connection here from what we were discussing earlier. So I think that maybe one of the reasons why he's saying pushing down, he's saying a lot of people take their anxiety that builds up, and rather than successfully leveraging it into action, they're trying to return to homeostasis. And the argument being like, once I feel okay, then I can act.
Yeah.
And I heard that for a very long time, that was obviously not the right approach, and that was perhaps the thing standing in my way. I had dealt with a lot of anxiety when I was younger, and it felt like this huge obstacle, and I'd always try to like retreat and collect myself and get to some sort of calm, and then I can go do this thing. Now with a little bit more wisdom and age, I think what's happening with that is, if your life is fundamentally sort of unstructured and you don't really have systems in place, like a plan of precisely what you want to do to grow, engage, where you're headed, all of that, when anxiety shows up about your future, you feel completely vulnerable to it, because you don't know how to step forward. The energy doesn't get converted to action because you have no clue where to put your foot, because you haven't taken the time ahead of time to frame a vision, frame pragmatic steps of like how you're going to get where you want to go, narrow that focus, and know what you're about and who you are. So challenge then gets experienced as like, oh, this is just a heavy load that's scary, and every time it comes I have to like back off, versus, oh, this challenge, but I can actually solve this problem potentially, because I can kind of see, I know that it's solvable because I've already thought through like breaking down the steps. You can kind of see a little bit of a roadmap, and that lets you start to step forward. I mean, I'm just speaking for myself here. I think of on both sides of it. Now that I plan my life a bit, things that I thought before were, I literally didn't understand how people took on hard challenges, because like it feels so difficult. Like I have no idea what to do, and it's like, oh, it's because you engage more and you plan more and you do these small things so that you can trust that you're up for the challenge.
Yeah, 100%. And I just figured that out recently with the gym stuff. It was a different context for me, but literally that is like, I thought anxiety was this obstacle, and it is, and it can be, but it also is a really powerful motivator, and like almost fuel for your internal engine, for lack of better words.
Well, yeah. Plus that has a whole host of other things that are like, it's going to boost your dopamine, testosterone. You're going to get some adrenaline out of it. You're going to get, a lot of positive chemicals go floating around once you lift some heavy weights.
Yeah, that's that too.
Yeah.
How much in our culture that's
sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It's about trying to get homeostasis, a word that I really despise, that homeostasis, and trying to get back to this place of calm or flow so that they can move forward. And what they don't appreciate, or what people haven't been told, because the science is very new, is that all forms of adaptive behavior in the animal kingdom and in humans, whether or not it's with the mind or the body or both, involve a fairly high level of stress and anxiety that was designed to move us forward. And it doesn't have to be just competition and battle. This could be writing your book. This could be finding the mate that you.
Another intervening moment here. An adjacent topic that's pretty big on the internet, and Huberman he has a pretty good video on this, and he's also injected this topic into a lot of his other content. Just the function of dopamine. Just real quick, just again, it's formerly was understood more as a reward chemical. It's much more accurately plays a role in the human system as a sort of action chemical, like causing you to take movement towards reward. It's tied into a whole other host of things involving learning and memory and things like that. But it's important for movement to such a degree that if you take lab mice, and you do something to either block their ability to experience dopamine, or you even kill their dopamine receptor sets all together, you can put food and water and mating mates, things that are obviously desirable, within one body length of them in a cage, and they will not move that body length to engage with those things. They'll starve to death, or dehydrate to death, because they do not have dopamine. So if you are doing a lot of, just as a dovetail to what he's talking about here, the importance of taking those anxious energies and turning them into motion as a means of dealing with them successfully. If you are doing lots of things that sap your dopamine, getting poor sleep, maybe drinking too much, maybe engaged in other behaviors that cause spikes and dips of your dopamine that are wild, drugs, pharmacology, pornography, potentially.
Phones, devices, yeah.
Those devices too,
YouTube, yeah.
That will severely hamper your motive to act, which then, to my mind, means that in the face of anxious situations, the probability that you're going to be in retreat mode is way higher than engaged.
Yeah. And we did a whole episode on Huberman and his kind of take on dopamine. And I meant to do this in the beginning. I'll shout out Huberman Lab podcast, where he is, if you're not watching him already, it's highly recommended. I have his page pulled up here. He covers everything. Obviously, dopamine. He's a neuroscientist, so he knows about how all this stuff works. But he gets deep into dopamine, but also fitness, and recently like caffeine and cannabis and nicotine and learning a lot. So yeah, focus is a big one of his. So it's obviously tied to dopamine. So yeah, definitely check out Huberman Lab if you haven't already. But yeah, let's get back to the video here.
You know, that you want to find a life mate. It could be any number of different things that you're going to pursue. There's always anxiety associated with that. And trying to bypass that could actually represent the failure of our species. I actually worry that if humans keep seeking for these comfort zones at the outset of effort, we could actually devolve as opposed to evolve. Wow. And it's not supposed to feel good at the beginning, folks. It doesn't feel good for any animal. It's not supposed to feel good for you and me. And I will balance this with something about restoration and recovery of this process, but it's so vital. And I think it's why the movie Rocky, why cancer survivors, why the Rosa Parks story, why David Goggins, why these stories evoke such a deep sense of inspiration in us, is because it's as tapping into something as vital and primitively important as thirst or hunger or the desire to mate. It's at the core of how we got to where we are, and it's at the core of how we're going to move forward. The prefrontal cortex is just a kind of frontal real estate. We have a lot more of it than mice do. It's the area of the brain that actually causes humans a lot of neurotic discomfort because it's so good at thinking and multitracking. Just a little fun tidbit: we can multitrack, we can multitask. Anyone says that they can't multitask has never picked up a neuroscience textbook. There's something called covert attention. We can split our attention between two things very easily. I can look at you, for instance, and I can monitor the periphery of the room at the same time if I wanted to. I can also bring my full attention to just our conversation, which is what I'm doing. So we can split our attention. We can multitask. What we need to do is, when we want to get better at something, we need to bring our full attention to that thing, and we need to start to engage to this internal reward process. I just want to briefly say about internal versus external rewards. The car you've always wanted, the watch you've always wanted, the piece of jewelry you've always wanted, the reward is still internal. You don't take that watch and cram it in your ear and dopamine gets, released. The dopamine release is always internal. The key is to learn how to attach
He's saying it, so I don't need to say it again, but I feel like there's a number of people that don't think about that deeply enough, what that idea means, or even deeply at all. Just that questioning why you like what you like, and not to the point where you rob it of your joy of the thing, but just like recognize what your relationship to the objects are.
Yeah.
So at least you understand why you're doing what you're doing, and then again, that thing. Remember that it is ultimately all internal. I've heard it said in other spaces that if you're seeking something specific, let's say you're seeking like victory in a competition or a new job role or some other moment of achievement, what you're really pursuing at the fundamental level is the experience of the feeling of the moment of achievement. You want to feel a certain way. Yeah. So you're not really you're not really seeking to be wealthy per se. You're seeking to feel what it feels like to have that access and freedom and money. So and knowing that might help you understand that sometimes when you get carried away with those pursuits, maybe, or if they're driving you too much, or you feel even the opposite direction, you feel like they're so far away and you're lamenting that your life isn't aligned with those things, you can remind yourself that it's just, in a sense, it's just a state of mind that you're seeking, and you can elect in equal fashion, you can elect to abandon the negative state of mind that you may be carrying around, or drop the pursuit of this other thing altogether and just allow yourself to have like a comfortable state of mind right now, rather than needing to get that object. But if you want to go get it.
But yeah, and also just on the dopamine front, we talked about this before, but the dopamine gets released when you hit that achievement or when you get that thing. But then I think what the ultimate realization is, say it's a new car or a new house or whatever, you get a dopamine release, you get the kind of pleasure, almost, I think Hubernan says the peak of that dopamine is almost in the anticipation, like right before you get it or as you're getting it.
Right.
And then
like
it falls
driving
off.
to the dealership. Driving to the dealership to get the new car is when you're the happiest.
Yeah.
The most excited.
Yeah, or potentially driving home, but then there is this empty space afterwards, like the next day when you get in the new car, and you're not quite as excited as you thought you would be. And that's where this, like, the emptiness of the material kind of chase catches up with you, right? And you realize that it's not about the thing, it was about the pursuit of the thing, the attainment of the thing. And then now you have this thing, and it's just more things you got to take care of. So, and then we can talk about minimalism and all that stuff. But
which is why you can take that, understand that relationship, rather than be upset that there is no object that's going to give you that. You recognize the middle part where there seems to be a relationship between pursuit and delivering a sense of meaning that's ongoing and replenishable. Yeah. So then you can, instead of using that to target, even if it still is objects, you come up with an internal monologue for what that relationship is. It's like the why behind what you're doing is overlaid on top of these efforts. Even if it's the same car or the same house, now you have this other thing happening where you can use as your metric for when you're allowed to kind of celebrate your process, and you can celebrate it in the middle when you see yourself like saving up the money every paycheck, or lifting the weights and slowly seeing that you're going up like 1% every week. Like you can start to derive dopamine and satisfaction from that point of the process, rather than having to wait for the big payoff and then the drop.
Yeah, definitely.
Internal process of thinking and self-reward to the release of dopamine. And the brain wants to do that. It wants to learn how to do that. But as long as we're backing away from anxiety, stress, and trying to get super calm at the front end of the pursuit, then there's no way you can get there. You're in a pause mode or retreat mode. You are the losing mouse. You want to be the winning mouse. You want to take more steps forward per unit time. That's all it is. If you're somebody who has anxiety, or you find that you're just burning too much energy, you're finishing your days grinding or depleted, that's where sometimes it's called superoxygenation, but really should be called carbon dioxide offloading breath practice should come into play. It's very simple. You sit down, never do it near water, don't do it lying, you don't do it driving, but you can sit down or lie down. You inhale and exhale 25 times. Be a little forceful about it, excuse me. And after the 25th one or 30th, doesn't matter so much, exhale all your air and hold your breath for 15 seconds and stay calm while you experience that heightened level of activation. What you're doing with those 25 or 30 breaths is you're triggering the release of adrenaline into your system. You're creating a little mild form of stress. You might say, well, why would you want to do that? Well, when you exhale and you remain calm, you're now teaching the brain to be calm when you have a shot of adrenaline in your system. You can accomplish the same thing through an ice bath.
Another upvote here for jiu-jitsu as something to help you routinely stimulate this experience, because it's a physical encounter. It involves, heightened state of awareness, adrenaline, energy, all of that. But one of the, I'd say, hallmarks of the sport is that you frequently feel close contact, like crushing pressure. You feel you frequently have somebody's body weight driving into you, and your sternum's being depressed, and you're not suffocated. Well, sometimes you are, but it's like claustrophobia, heavyweight pressure, kind of suffocating kind of feeling that's like low grade that you have to, or potentially really high grade at moments that you have to learn to manage all of the time. It's called when you tap to a submission, if people ask, like, did you tap to pain? Like, did you tap to like being fully caught, or did you tap to pressure? Pressure just means that you got wildly uncomfortable. Like you weren't actually in physical danger of something being broken or being knocked out, but maybe like your amount of air you could take in was limited to like 20%, or the amount of just like claustrophobia, hugging, crushing feeling was just overwhelmed you and you got really uncomfortable and you tapped out. It's like it helps you to be put in those states routinely, I think, and then having to stay calm or at least control your mind a bit enough to feel your way out of the situation. I think that is a method of engaging your adrenaline system in everyday life in a way that is less common for many people. But
Yeah. And actually, going back to my morning routine, he mentions a cold shower here, or ice bath. This is kind of the more extreme version. So if you're not ready for jujitsu, I'd highly recommend a cold shower as part of your routine, because that's another one of those small wins that you can kind of rack up in the day. You feel like you've actually accomplished something when you get out. It's really a powerful tool, and as he says, it taps in this kind of ability to remain calm during kind of an adrenaline rush, which trains the brain to be able to do that, which seems very important. I'm still kind of figuring out in my own head how to, or I'm still like figuring out how it works for me, but it is working.
Yeah. For full, I mean, I hate doing it. I've done it, but never that consistently, because I always start it and abandon it because I hate it so much. But the feeling is that it's literally pure. The chill comes over you, and every part of your body is like, "Get me out of here." So it's essentially a distilled version of fight or flight. Your body's like, "I want out of this situation right now," and then you have to be like, "No," you have to keep yourself there, and you have to breathe through it. Yeah,
and that's a great lesson in and of itself. Just being like, "Oh, I can control this." Like my body, wants to get out, and your body wants to do a lot of things all the time. You want to eat sometimes 3 meals a day, or too many meals, which was my problem for a long time. Or you want to smoke or drink or whatever, and like, there's a power in realizing like my body wants something, but I'm ultimately in control of that to a degree, and or to a large degree, I believe. And yeah, the power of the mind. Worth exploring, at least if you haven't tried it.
For a cold shower and learning to relax in that kind of confrontational situation. But there's nothing quite like breathing, because, and here I'm quoting David Spiegel again, he always says, it's not just about the state you're in, but whether or not you had anything to do with getting there, right? When you self-induce these states, you're teaching your brain how to drive and kind of maneuver within these different states of mind. It's different than like driving along and all of a sudden you're skidding on ice, or you're in a blanket of fog. It's sort of like you're turning on and off the fog. You're learning how to drive in fog by turning on and off fog, where you're going black ice and then onto nice dry concrete. So it's a process that you can learn to play with. Now, if you really want to get good at it and kind of push it, you can do these 25 breaths, exhale, hold your breath for 5 to 15 seconds, then inhale and hold. But you have to be careful. If you have cardiopulmonary issues or heart issues, you definitely want to talk to a doctor first, because it does build up a lot of pressure in your system, but that will ramp up the intensity more. And so what this is really doing is it's increasing your threshold for what you consider stressful. It's self-induced stress inoculation. So you can also sit in an ice bath and learn how to stay calm in an ice bath. You can also get into an argument with your spouse and learn how to stay calm, but I don't recommend that one. So these are ways of teaching our nervous system using physiology how to calm down and how to tolerate discomfort from a place of calm and clarity, both of which are powerful. If you can.
Yeah. So again, shout out to Mindset Mentor for the video. They do really cool edits of interesting people. I like how they do that with the video clips.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that was really well cut together and honed in on one aspect of the lesson. That was interesting. I had no idea that one scientific tidbit of how it literally part of your brain literally will translate the anxiety into the drive to take more steps per unit of time forward.
Yeah.
So maybe that's something like collapsing your sense of time. Like, your sense of time can dilate or collapse. Like if you're I was in a car accident once, and it felt like everything was in hyper slow motion. I could see like things falling and moving inside the cabin of the car because like the airbag deployed and the glass was broken and all that. Or the opposite can happen. Like there's an urgent need to act in a specific moment. So you suddenly ramp it up and do 2-3 motions in the space of what would normally be one motion for you. Perhaps that's what he's talking about. But yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah, and the reason I wanted to, did you have? Okay, the reason I want to bring this up, January 2023 is, I mean, we could have done any video really, but I wanted something in the realm of, I mean, we talked last time, it wasn't last week, but our last podcast, we talked about kind of the fallibility of New Year's resolutions. There's a reason so many people, I'm experiencing right now actually as I go to the gym, so many people show up to the gym in January and usually they're gone by February, or, you know, all those new people, because New Year's resolutions don't really work. But there is something to be said for using the new year and making a plan for yourself, or coming up with a system for yourself for the year, and thinking through, you know, what do you want this year to look like? Like I said before, it'd be the best year of your life if you decide it right now, or at some point, if, you know, you can make that happen. Like that's within, I think, any of our reach. And that's my plan for the year. You know, I have more plans than that, but you know, every year I want to make better than the last, and I try to make a conscious kind of inventory of that in January, or at least I have recently the last few years. So this is one of the tools you can use. I mean, obviously we talked a lot about different ones. You know, the anxiety kind of drive is one of the tools you can use. I think if you don't already have them lined up, when we've talked about this a million times, getting your sleep, your diet, some exercise, your social life, you know, some form of interconnection with other people, and your insight, whether it's meditation or yoga or journaling or something along those lines. Getting those 5 things in order would be really helpful. So if you're lacking on 1 or 2 or 3 of those, try to get those lined up. That's like the baseline for catapulting your life to the next level in every domain. So I would recommend those. And then I think, Alex, you had some thoughts on your plan for the year.
Yeah, it's not even for the year. It's just to begin. If you're not doing it already, begin a life practice of orienting yourself towards a future that you've already taken the time to think out. Like even if you don't know all the pieces that lay out to get there, at least a vision for where you want to head, and get in the habit of referencing that vision on a routine basis of some sort that you self-derive, a week, a month, whatever it is, and then figure out ways to try your best to organize your life to bring you closer to alignment with that thing, or the set of things. I mean, I've been playing with a number of practices, from like bullet journals to whiteboards to, I wrote like a custom script in Python at one point that would ask me at the end of the day what I've been doing. I play with I've read tons of books on this stuff. I played with these ideas for several years, but what it boils down to is, it's not that this year is going to be the year. It's that you begin to recognize that, oh, if I harness my focus a bit and I target some specific things and I work towards them semi-diligently, I will make significant progress in them. And if I can keep that up across a very long span of time, then I will have huge development there. So it's not that it by the end of 2023, I will have built this landscape at the end of the year. It's more like, oh, I will have decided what I actually care about, therefore eliminating every other option that you don't actually care about as much, which then kind of makes things a little bit simpler for you. Because when you try to figure out what should I be doing with my day, the work of fighting between what's appealing in the moment, the lazier parts of you that just want to rest or maybe eat donuts and stuff, or even the parts of you that are pragmatic and motivation driven, you're doing something that on the face of it is productive or useful. It's like, oh, I've been doing pull-ups all day. That's fantastic. But if you have no long-term vision that relates at all to being good at pull-ups, or that particular strength set doesn't build into your sport, like, I don't know, let's say you like curling or something, or you're a fisherman, that's useless time that you could have been using to target abilities and skills and learnings that involve what that vision is. So again, I spoke in the broadest possible terms. Come up with a vision of what you want, and then begin working on shaping that up. And that might take you a few years to get it
Yeah.
tight, because I think one of the bigger lessons I learned the past couple of years is like, you really can't do everything. You just can't. There is the average. I've read this quote, a statistic. It's like the average, I don't know, the average worker's planner has like a backlog of 40 hours of stuff per week that don't get done, which means that just there's always something else that comes to mind that you're gonna slate into your to-do list, and you're never ever gonna catch up to it. But what that tells me is that you just are not really being A, selective about what you're doing, but B, at the higher level, actually A1, let's not say B, you haven't really confronted the reality that you can do great things with a few things, but you truly cannot do everything. So the work of figuring out what's most important to you is the hardest work. And it's the work that you're going to have to revisit constantly. But hopefully as you do that, you get narrower and narrower. You can extract from that a set of goals that make it clear what you need to be doing day to day. And it's not a New Year's resolution. It's something you begin doing as a lifetime habit, so that you don't need to make New Year's resolutions, because you already know what you're about. You're about the same thing you were in 2022.
Yeah.
You take the time to address those ingredients and heighten some things up, or come to some conclusions about where you failed, and kind of put a cap on the year that helps you sort of ingest the successes, but also the shortcomings. Like, oh, well, I really truly didn't do that well in this domain, and I need to level it up. Like, that can help you. But yeah,
That's actually a good point that I totally overlooked. You should probably also spend some time, and maybe this goes without saying, looking back on 2022. This is kind of what you're talking about, on where you fell short of your own standards, and where if you had a plan for the year, or if you had a plan for your life in general, where you didn't meet the goals, or you didn't live up to the systems that you had built. So yeah, I'm always kind of in forward thinking mode, but it's also definitely valuable to do an inventory of what went right or what went wrong last year, and that way you don't repeat the same mistakes, or you can build on your successes.
Yeah, I mean, I just spoke a bit too long on an abstract idea, but making it pragmatic. Like, one of the biggest tools that I took on that is useful is a simple journaling app that I just have. I can pull it up hit the Windows key on my laptop, and then type in 2 letters, and it pops up, and I have it. And some of my entries, some days I don't make entries. I probably make an entry realistically on average probably once every other day or every third day. But this past year, or even at the end of each month or 6 months, or at the end of the year, I can totally go back and I can see, like, oh, where was I at in January mentally? Like, what was I dealing with or thinking about? And you think you would know. You think, oh, I know who I am. I know what I'm about. But then I'm like, oh, what? I was doing that in January?
Yeah.
I forgot that completely. I spent like 2 months doing, like, I had no idea even. And it helps you to see the arc of your growth. It helps you to, and more importantly, figure out like what you actually care about. Like, oh, I cared about this stuff 2 years ago. I made like a mission statement for myself that if I read it today, it would be the exact same. So like, maybe I should pay attention to that. So a journal, a simple journaling app or journal of whatever form, just as a memory bank to remind yourself is really good. And it's downstream again of the whole idea of like having a vision for yourself and paying attention to yourself. And then from there, yeah, I mean, it's everything else Charlie was talking about those are all important habits involving health and wellness. Like, if you don't have a fitness routine, get one. If you're eating like crap, fix that. If you're not sleeping well, fix that. But you can take each of those things on one at a time, and it might be a 3-month thing that you manage. You don't deal with any other end of it, and it's okay. And again, it's best if that, whatever that activity is, your reason for doing it or improving at it is embedded within a larger scale, self-derived vision for why. Why do you want to? Why is it important to not be texting or looking at crap on Instagram till 2 a.m. every day so you wake up groggy? Why do you need to not be groggy and have more energy? How's your life going to be different if you achieve this thing? How will the lives of people around you be different if you achieve this thing? Start thinking through sort of like a longer term impact of what how you will change, but how your environment will change if you make those decisions and implement them. And then I think those are good basic stepping stones to figuring out how to start acting, and what to do. But yeah.
Yeah, I think you just talked me into doing journaling or take it more seriously this year. I have an app where I called Dailyo, I think, and you kind of tick boxes for, I exercised today, I ate well today, I did this. There's a little space for notes at the bottom, but it's more of like a kind of rate your day. So I've been doing that, but yeah, I think I'm gonna try to get more serious about the journaling thing and maybe we'll do an episode on that actually because I hear a lot of people recommending that, a lot of smart people recommending that. So it's probably worth a whole episode.
Yeah, I've been down. I mean, the other thing I noticed, yeah, you do routine. I experienced this past year. You do end up routinizing what you practice often enough. Certain things that used to take me a lot of willpower to go do, and a lot of that back and forth self persuasion, and do I put my shoes on and go do this or not? Now are kind of just part of my patterns. I don't have to put a lot of psychic energy, mental energy into doing them, which then frees up space to add like a new layer. So like the things that I'm focusing on this year are related to, but distinct from, and their specific actions. Everything that I was worried about last year. I got certain things implemented and set to a routine. Like I wasn't doing any jiu-jitsu, and then my goal was to pick it up again and go routinely, which in my mind was at least 3 times a week. And there were some other markers I set for myself based on like advancement and respect of people in the space and yada, yada, yada. And then looking back on my journal, I was like, I hit all of those and beyond that a little bit. And now this year, I'm not concerned about going 3-4 days a week. Like I will go. I just know that I'll go. So I don't need to have that on my like checklist. And I have new things I'm attending to that can kind of slot in. The amount of it's now part of my routine and my identity. Anyway, I'm over talking.
No, we have an earlier episode on habit. I think we have Atomic Habits, which really goes into depth on that. But it's the parallel for the gym for me. In the beginning there was a bit of a struggle, but I just decided. Actually, the first time I went, I decided, and this was only, like I said, I talked about this before, but I went when I was younger, and then I stopped for a long time, and then I went again last year, and the first time I walked out, I just felt so good, and I was like, wow, this talking about going back to what you mentioned about finding goals that kind of align with kind of your larger life goals, or activities align with kind of your larger life plans or vision. I realized walking out of the gym, like, oh, this is like, on the surface level, the anxiety goes away and you feel better and you just are a little bit, I guess there's a dopamine boost there or something along those lines. But I was like, oh, this is something, it's like a puzzle piece that fell into place. I was like, oh, this is something I've been missing. Yeah. And I've something should have been doing forever and should be doing basically forever from now on. So I was like, all right, so I'm just going to start doing this every Monday, Wednesday, Friday from now on. And I just did. I just made the decision and I did. And since then, I haven't, unless I was out of town, I haven't missed a day of going. And it's the same thing with yoga. When I decided, like, when I did it and I felt it and I realized how it fit into the puzzle of my life, that like, oh, this is helping me with flexibility and again, kind of a meditative practice that I've always struggled to kind of stick to, commit to pure meditation, but yoga is an easier kind of form of meditation for me. And kind of getting in touch with my body, a lot of different things that I had, all these abstract goals that I had, I was like, oh, yoga just like does all of that for me. Or it helps me do like 5 of these things that I wanted to do. So as soon as I did that for the first time, I was like, oh, I'm just going to start doing this every day because I can. And it's an iPad app. So I've stuck to that. I've done it every day, even while traveling. I think I missed one day, I think, since I started more than 6 months ago. But go ahead.
Well, no, and circling back to the original topic, using what you just said, like if you view yourself as somebody that's never really either
Oh,
you've tried to do stuff like this and
yeah,
you've
and I'm awful at habits and exercise. Yeah,
right,
I'm so
right.
bad at that. So that's why it was so interesting to just have that click for both of those, for the gym and for yoga, to be like, as I finished the first time with both of them, I was like, oh, I just need to do this because there's
Well,
so many.
there was a larger reason for you though. What
Yeah,
was can you talk about that a little bit or
yeah. I mean, they're both
in
related, just
brief?
to health. Just like I was mountain biking before, which was kind of my outlet for physical activity. Obviously, it's winter now, so I can't do that, and I had an injury which stopped me from doing that for a few months. So I was like, how do I replace that? And I knew the gym was an option, even though I have to drive to it. It's kind of a pain. It's close enough, but yeah, it's just basically health. It's just like I've spent actually, yeah. So, man, I could talk about this for a while probably, but I spent a long time overweight in my life and really overweight at the times. And I thought as soon as I just lose enough weight, actually, I'm just kind of realizing this as I'm saying it. So I thought that if, the goal was to just lose weight and become like 180 pounds or whatever, for 6'3", whatever I am, like that's roughly what I should be. Um, so I just need to lose weight and then I'll be healthy. And then as I got close to 180 pounds, I was like, wait, there's a whole other side to this health thing. It's not just not being overweight. It's I need to be doing things to preserve my health. And I got that injury. I broke my jaw. I felt kind of a sense of mortality. And I just realized like, oh, this body, I need to preserve it. And that was the big thing for the gym, was like, I need to preserve this body if I want to live a long and healthy and happy life, which I plan to do. I need to put some effort in, and I can't just, it's not, diet alone is not enough. You have to have exercise. All the research shows that the people who do, I think it's if you do 30 minutes of cardio a day, you live longer, you're happier, mental and physical health is better, life, all cause mortality, I believe, goes down. So less risk of getting cancer, less risk of a heart attack. There's a million reasons. So like knowing all of this intellectually, hearing Huberman, hearing all these people talk about this all the time, hearing people like David Goggins talk about it from just the pure pleasure side, or not even pleasure, but the pure like drive side of it. And I knew a lot of this instinctually or intellectually, but so all the pieces were in place. It was like a puzzle that was just missing one piece. And the piece was just me going to the gym and doing it and actually lifting some weights. And I didn't know what I was doing the first time. I just kind of went into the room, and there's one room in my gym where you just do all the weights, or they have machines for the whole body. And I was just like, I'll just try each one and do a few reps on each, and I'll pick a weight that feels hard to me. And like, I didn't know what I was doing, but like, yeah, I walked out and I was like, oh, okay, this feels right. And I don't, it aligns, to answer your question, it just aligns with kind of a broader goal of health, which enables everything else in my life, which will enable me to be a better mountain biker, obviously, but also to be a better coder when I'm doing that. Like because it reduces anxiety and it increases my ability to kind of focus in general, because I'm not distracted by this kind
But
of
did you get
pent-up energy.
something aside from the intellectual kind of reasoning? What did you get a visceral? What was the visceral experience of doing it in the moment? Did you come out of it like with a feeling, like a physical, like, oh, my body feels different, this is interesting, I like this, I want this, whatever this is?
Yeah, I mean, I remember the moment of walking out of the gym. I just felt really good. It's hard to describe, but I just the first time I went and I did. Well, I started and I did what I used to do, and I was just doing elliptical for the first couple of weeks. So that didn't do it for me, because I've always done that. I've always done cardio. But the first time I went, when I did combine the elliptical, the cardio, and the weightlifting, strength training, I guess they call it. That combination, that's when I walked out of the gym, and it was, I don't know what I was experiencing during the thing. I was just focusing on learning. It was a new thing. I was kind of distracted while I was there. Not distracted, but just focused on doing the thing. It was walking out of the gym that I just felt good. And I mean, I'm not. This goes to our different personalities, but I'm not good at kind of describing my inner mental or physical state very well. But I just, it felt good in a way that I hadn't felt good maybe ever without using drugs or something exogenous to like
Right.
I like yeah, I guess that's probably it. Like I realized, oh, I can make myself feel good without having to drink something or smoke something or whatever. It's just like, oh, I could just feel good spending an hour in this building that's not that far from my house. So I was like, oh, let me just do this every week now, or 3 times a
Right.
week
Right.
now.
Right.
So yeah, I guess that's probably the short, medium length version of it. If that answers your question.
Yeah. Just it does. Just as much as get you to share your own visceral experience, because I think the failure point is a lot of people collect data
Yeah.
or data, as Huberman likes to call it, data, and then they like, well, how come if I just get a little more data, I'll fill up this vessel and get to like a tipping point where it
Yeah.
spills out into action, and it's never quite. The data informs the action somehow. It can kind of be motivating sometimes, but it doesn't really produce the outcome. The outcome is always related to something more visceral. It's if you
Yeah.
engage with the thing, did you get something out of it, frankly, in the moment? And if you
Yeah.
and that may be that may be for you, like you kind of shared downstream of life events that kind of made you confront some big ideas, like with your jaw injury, maybe not being able to participate in your sport that you like very much for a whole season, realizing, oh wow, like if I was in shape, I could have totally prevented this whole accident, or like better shape, stronger, I could have prevented this whole
Yeah.
accident. That those are big thoughts and big senses of like loss and pain and whatever that help you to go, oh, I should do this thing. And yeah, I'm just making an argument for people, the inventory of if you're the type of person who hasn't found their thing yet, maybe, or stepped out of the box to try a lot of stuff, or maybe you've had halting starts with things. It's my guess is it's probably because you haven't done the work of figuring out what you want for yourself, and found like a meaningful set of whys behind engaging in the behavior.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I had intellectualized a lot of whys, 'cause like I said, like I knew the research, I knew all the smart people that I listened to and that I appreciate on like the podcast scene, the Huberman types. Like he clearly goes to the gym a lot and talks about it a lot. So I knew it was something that should be on my schedule daily, if not daily, then multi times a week. It just it took me, like as you say, actually going and doing it and feeling it. And for me, it was the first time. I don't think that's common for every, and even for me, like other endeavors, it takes me a few times or 100 to realize, to get into the habit, to figure it, to get that feeling of, oh, I'm actually accomplishing something, or I'm feeling, this activity that I'm doing is actually taking me in a direction that I want to go in. So I was lucky with yoga and the gym that like literally the first time that I really put effort into it, I walked away and I felt strongly enough about it that I made a plan to just do it for the rest of my life, a consistent schedule. But it might not happen for the first time, but that's okay too. Just keep doing it. If it doesn't work, adjust, try different things. Yeah, but you've got a whole new year to figure all this stuff out. Yeah, that's all I've got on that.
Use to Huberman's point, frame. I guess, well, I don't know if he says this explicitly, but I'm trying to make sense of what he's describing as happening with those mice in that cage, because one mouse advances, their brain moves into advance, the other one moves into retreat. So I guess that's downstream of, like, for humans, I guess it's downstream of frame what your actions are ahead of time in pursuit of meaningful rewards, so that when you are caught in conflicted and challenging moments, you will convert that stressor into something that makes you move, instead of something that makes you kind of cower or look for an escape through, ignoring it or letting it build up or watching TV or whatever you might do to not engage. And I think that's probably downstream of knowing what you're about and having kind of a reason and a plan for where you're headed, so you can endure the downside. The other final caveat for people that, even if you say, okay, well, I've done this sort of exercise before, I've done my pie in the sky thinking, and it just feels so ridiculous and distant and never leads to any action for me, and it feels dumb, like I'm a little kid dreaming. It's possible that you're not giving yourself permission to act. It's possible that you have a lot of distracted activities at the immediate layer of your life that you need to get away from. Maybe you're using drugs a lot. Maybe you're screwing around with just distractions, video games and TV, all that. But even more legitimately, maybe you have a lot of instability in your life in general right now. And maybe that type of thinking, you're not ready for it yet, but still doing that thinking might be the way that you can begin to go, oh, if I were to sort out whatever's responsible for this chaos in my existence, in my immediate life, then I can begin to walk this path that looks pretty cool to me. So then day one might not be taking your first step on that path. Day one is sweeping up the trash-filled landscape that you're in and clearing it out. And that might take you a long time. That might take you a year. Who knows?
Yeah.
It depends on your life. It might take you a very long time. But doing that, once you've cleared it, you can go, oh, okay, now I'm free to walk this path. Maybe you have to move out from a place you're in. Maybe you have to quit a job. Maybe you have to move back in with parents or something. Maybe you have to do something dramatic. That won't be like hitting a light switch, but it will be a deferred growth kind of thing.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah. Anyway.
No, definitely. Good point. I was going to say, you mentioned kind of the leaning into things. I just want to shout out. So Andrew Huberman has a ton of good, like every one of his podcasts is good, but his with Jocko Willink is very interesting because Jocko is very about the kind of moving forward. So if you want to learn more about that, I would recommend checking out his episode with Jocko. Actually, specifically on Huberman's podcast, because on Jocko's podcast he had Huberman on, and that's also an excellent video. But it's a 5-hour, and we talked about this one I think maybe, but it's a 5-hour thing on like the optimal day of like what to do in the morning and then the whole day. So that's a different category. But on Huberman Lab podcast, when Jocko was a guest, he talks about this kind of stuff, forward center of mass, as he calls it. So yeah, that's another recommendation if you need some inspiration in that department. But that's all I've got. Anything else, Alex, for today?
No, I'm gonna try to use the stressors of the things I'm afraid of and not achieving in my life to motivate strategic action in 2023 and engage with those actions at a subset level in my daily and weekly activities, which I check in with a journal.
Yeah.
And a scheduling app so I can make sure I'm on target.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Try journaling if you haven't. Anyone watching, maybe you jump on that experiment with me for this year, or for this month at least. But yeah, I'm gonna give that a try. But that's it for this week. If you liked the video, please like the video. If you want to hear more, subscribe. We would appreciate that. And if you have topics you'd like us to talk about in the future or videos you want us to cover, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And have a great 2023.